let's explore what I find to be the best evidence out there on Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yowie, Yeti. I'm really fond of the 1840 missionary report, the report of Elkanah Walker on the Spokane Native Americans. Again, it was one of the first to mention huge footprints, rock throwing, and a strong smell. If it were to be some sort of misinterpretation, then that's sad. And if it was to be the first hoax, then what an impressive idea. As far as photography goes, there are some revealing photos out there, though I find Bigfoot photos to be even easier to fake than those of UFOs. That being said, if you do have photos of what you believe to be a Sasquatch or video footage, please do share down below or contact me privately. I find the turned over trees and the weird positioning of trees and tree branches to be interesting but not compelling enough, though there are some interesting photos and findings out there that are really almost perfectly crisscrossed trees and branches. This also brings up the idea of gifting. You place something, an assortment of sticks and stones, for example, and you leave it out in the forest, you come back and you see them rearranged as a sort of communication with Bigfoot. We have to keep in mind that raccoons are very common here. Well, it's not very likely, but it is possible. It's very possible that even a simple creature as a raccoon could actually place those things out of curiosity around and leave them there and not make it look like they were just shifted by a squirrel or something. So that's also a tough call. Thick tree branches being twisted, it depends how they were found. And again, the assortment of the gifting depends as well. It's very case by case. But the twisting of branches is a bit more interesting to me because of the sheer force that had to go into twisting that branch and the direction that it had to move that branch, whatever the force was. If it would be something natural like winds or another tree pushing another one, it's hard to find a part of a tree to be twisted off like that. Dr. Wolfhenner Fehrenbach, a zoologist that believes in Sasquatch, studied over 700 prints, and in 2006 had 15 samples of DNA he could not identify. For me as a researcher into this kind of weird stuff, when I find something that is said to be unidentified, not known, and it's like something along DNA and molecular structures, I find that really fascinating and curious why people do not go further to discover what it is or further to get the public's attention on the ambiguity of what they found. Because I would think that would be quite interesting. Here's some more great info. In 2012, a veterinarian researcher claimed that Sasquatch DNA links to that of human females who must have bred with other male beings. As far as footprint tracks being great evidence, I find that the idea of finding tracks in the middle of nowhere or at a very high altitude and having proof that you were the only one that discovered them and to be in the vicinity, I find that pretty fascinating. But personally, I wouldn't put too much attention on tracks, especially not in this day and age. They can indeed be easily created, but it's still sort of a fun Easter egg hunt, if you will. One interesting piece of so-called evidence that I found was of this Survivor Man presentation. This main, shall we call him host, of the Survivor Man TV show was a really interesting listen, as what he mentions was never mentioned in the show. And this guy knows the outdoors pretty well. It seems like some good proof of something, as he did find deer bones out in the mountains with human teeth-like scratches on them, as well as the whole tree weaving thing and trees being planted upside down. And he does mention more, and I think interestingly so, when I was reading the comments under the video, and I sort of agree with him on this, is that he presented more sort of evidence and experience with the creature than in all the episodes of, I think the show is called Bigfoot Hunter or Monster Hunters, or both. And viewers seem to find it so, as well as myself, because of the sincerity of how he approached this topic and how he presented it. It wasn't the point of his discussion. It was sort of led there from questions. And I have to strongly state this. the more the enhanced analytical videos of different footage come out and expose the hoaxers, the more hoaxers also learn how to better in their, let's call it, craft. This gives them an opportunity to actually learn from one another and even possibly from the real footage out there, and so to ultimately be better fakers. As with UFOs, video footage has entered into a much different spectrum of presentability in this quote-unquote modern age. I believe that no matter how perfect your video footage may be, in this and the future time of CGI, it will only prove meaningless as immediate doubters will arise, which I find sort of scary. As I often think, what if I filmed or caught an alien on video or something like that? If I ever had strong evidence like that and put it on YouTube, especially with this many viewers, and if it was real, it wouldn't matter because people would already doubt it for how real and clear it is. They would deem it CGI and practical effects or whatever. But if it would catch strong enough attention, then wouldn't the government take it out? So it seems like we're at a point of no-win situation as far as video footage goes, except for sharing with locals around you and people that actually know you and trust that you're not lying. And this said, here are some of the more convincing motion clips I could find. Again, look deeper into them and check out some different perspectives on them and let me know what you guys think.
Oh, there he goes. Jesus.
Смотри, ветки шатаются. Смотри.
О, побежал! Я заснял его!
Чтоб не испугать его, пошли.
Я заснял!
Смотри.
Another part of my best evidences that I have to mention are the missing person cases, the 411s. The book entitled Missing 411 by author David Paulides expresses that he thinks something more intriguing is afoot. His book examines more than 1,100 cases of people mysteriously vanishing from United States parks, and many of these cases involving seasoned hikers, not just beginners or families or people taking a stroll. So that book is a great source on disappearances, and from a different perspective as well. But you can also do more research just by Googling. Google disappearances at national parks, and you'll find a lot of great information as well. As mentioned earlier, I do find DNA to be a rather hot point with these best evidences, especially when they're deemed unknown, as some reports express, and are just left there without any further serious interest. If you already have some knowledge on this topic, you might be thinking, when am I going to mention the hand bones and the scalp in Tibet? And well, let's talk about it. There is a Tibetan temple that has been known to hold the hand bones and scalp of a Yeti. Now, when this information first started getting public, a man named Peter Byrne first stole some pieces of the artifact of the hand. Later, actor James Stewart smuggled more of the hand out of Tibet, out of the monastery. When tested in 1960, it was said to be closer to a Neanderthal. And keep in mind, they were stolen because the monks wouldn't let anybody get their hands on these artifacts. In 1991, testing under the TV program Unsolved Mysteries revealed it to not be human, but very close, quote-unquote near human. Then the most recent 2011 DNA testing announcement said, quote-unquote, we have got a very, very strong match to a number of existing reference sequences of human DNA databases, end quote. To some, even that statement may be too unclear still. And being that the term Neanderthal was used, makes me find this case still quite intriguing. Unfortunately, but interestingly, the entire hand and scalp were stolen out of the monastery through a highly precise operation. Highly precise, what does that mean? Some government stole it, possibly China, or it could have been a religious sect, or it could have been some other really rich, interested people that wanted to sell it or keep it. And it was mentioned and kind of rumored that they have been seen in the black markets. So that concludes the whole artifacts of the Tibetan monastery. But does it really conclude it? In the end, those artifacts were replaced with replicas, which I think at this point, the monks of the monastery already know that they're replicas, because I think at the beginning when they were replaced, they were just given it back and they were happy, but they were never told that they were. I'm not sure about that. If that's true, that's pathetic to people act like that, to cheat them of something so valuable to them. One of the important evidences, I believe, for like personal research and interest gain and knowledge, I believe for yourself. If you're a true researcher, you will do this. This is something I did since I first started discovering weird things and reading about phenomena, aliens, and UFOs, particularly aliens. I would start asking other classmates about their experiences. And so I think one of the best evidences personally is a discussion and talking with family and friends. It's a great type of evidence of something definitely out there. And one should not be shy in approaching people with such questions. It's really not that hard. Again, personally haven't done it since 9 years old in my whole life practically. I know that you just have to figure out a way, a down-to-earth kind of approach without getting too weird or too deep into the topic, especially if they have no idea what you're talking about. A way of nonchalantly offering a feel of trust and comfort, and then let the person lead you. Reports of Bigfoot range from children to law officials to seniors that really have nothing to prove or gain from it, many of them preferring to stay anonymous. And I think that's important to underline, is that a lot of people prefer to stay anonymous, which I do think says a lot. Though keeping in mind the possibilities of such things as exaggeration and the rarity of the person being a pathological liar. The total numbers are high enough that the topic should still garnish respect. And knowing you've watched this video, you can consider yourself a researcher. So if you deem it weird or feel odd asking a family member or somebody at a store or museum if they've seen something weird, tell them you're working on a project, or you're doing some research, or you want to answer a friend's question. If you're at the start of such things and you feel too much heat on yourself for asking such questions, blame homework if you have to. Nothing should stop in the way of research. On the topic of best evidence, I want to bring up again my recent little adventure that I shared earlier in this video. When I was working on this video, I was really happy to learn that one of the, I believe, 3 Sasquatch museums in North America was located not too far. It's really nothing big, but a must stop for any enthusiast passing by. During my visit to the Sasquatch outpost in Bailey, I found this account. A man saw a Sasquatch an hour away from the outpost in the mountains and then came to the outpost and accused them of placing a fake one there. Now that's an interesting one. I also took advantage by interviewing a few of the locals as well. The owner, whom was delightful to chat with and shared somewhat an unlikely geographical past with me, her ambiguous account of possibly a hooded person, as well as the one played earlier that she heard that really piqued her interest. You know, the one with the shimmering portal and all. I also met a gentleman there that expressed his sighting of a large Sasquatch walking, as well as some he had heard. He also shared impressive UFO sightings he and his wife had, which I will cover in a future alien episode. I'm most grateful for his tales and permission to photograph him. Thanks again, Scott, and what a pleasant and insightful trip that was. Satisfied. Our short adventure, my wife and I's, took us to one of the big local hotspots, Wellington Lake. As this map indicates and suggests as a nice piece of evidence, and just to see this map, it's worth going there. Plus, if you want to share any evidence of your own, this map is a great way to do it. It's a great piece of growing evidence as visitors place a pin according to their type of experience on the locale where they had it. Again, I urge anyone to stop there, especially if you had an experience, and share it on this map, as well as in written form. Not to mention you have to check out the awesome display. Oh, and be sure to stop by Coney Island nearby for some awesome hot dogs. So we left and drove to Wellington Lake. Now on our little drive there on the dirt road, I did see some crisscrossing trees that looked like, well, they were created that way by strong winds, Bigfoot, or maybe somebody was coming from the outpost and wanted to pull around and did it. Now, going into the wilderness, we went with positive intentions. As usual, we found nothing extraordinary at the lake, and so enjoyed our stay there till sunset. Both a hot time and a hot spot for sightings, apparently. Of course, I did have to take advantage of the scenery with a quick sketch. And might I say, there's always something special about driving through a forest in the dark. But when doing so, always be wary of crossing animals for your safety and theirs. Now on the topic of best evidence, I told you I'd be coming back to that Gimlin footage, that greatest Bigfoot video ever. I'll admit that it's realistic, and it's a female, which already persuades many people to believe that this is authentic, because why would they make a hoax of a female Bigfoot, which would be harder to construct than a male one? But one cannot ignore Roger Patterson's past. Roger Patterson had a growing interest in Sasquatch and even spoke to many believers in 1962. He knew that if he found evidence, he would be famous, rich. He put forth thousands of hours and dollars in search of Sasquatch. He published a book in 1966 with a drawing of Bigfoot, just a year before the sighting. He had plans to film a pseudo-documentary about a hunt for Bigfoot, for which he would eventually require a Sasquatch costume for. He did visit LA for this purpose, as well as was known to try to make money through a variety of ways. He did borrow money to make the Sasquatch movie, as well as rent the camera that caught the female Sasquatch by chance. And be it noted that he also returned that camera late. He swore to the grave that everything, the prints, the video, was authentic. His partner at the time, Robert Gimlin, did not speak much of this publicly for many years after. He never denied the authenticity either. And Roger did insist to never shoot a Sasquatch. This brings to thought that maybe the hoax was known only to Roger and the mysterious costume partner, hence Roger didn't want Robert to unknowingly hurt their secret partner, while remaining truthfully perplexed about the experience. Do your own research, as many are for and against the legitimacy of this footage. There's many arguments for it being real, and there's many for it being fake. But long story short, this footage could take up an entire episode. Personally, I don't stand on either side of the crowd. But when people say that the inhuman movement or the costume quality for the time is not possible, then they put themselves in the same line of thought and brainstorm as those that disbelieve the footage. I feel the same way about many Bigfoot vocal recordings that I've heard. I think that those are possible to be created as well. A more analytical approach should be expressed, which would gain the whole phenomena greater overall respect. Just as I believe the possibility that a human could perform this in 1967, I so do believe in the possibility of an unknown bipedal creature living on this earth.